Welcome to Level Up Your Writing, presented by the Warminster Township Library. In today's video, we're going to talk about character building again. In our previous video about character, we discussed character strengths and flaws. In this video, we're going to talk about an aspect of characterization that you can use in conjunction with those flaws and strengths, and that is motivation. And what do I mean by character motivation? Well, I mean, what are the forces, external or internal, conscious or unconscious, that make your character do what they do? What do they want, and what are they willing to do to get it? Motivation can be determined by and informed by a character's backstory, or their upbringing, or their personality, or events in the story, or any combination of things. Depending on what motivates a character, they might make different choices, might notice different things, or might react to situations in different ways. External motivations can include things like food, shelter, and safety, while internal motivations can include things like the need to build relationships with other people, or succeed at a goal, or get revenge. Motivation can also be conscious or unconscious. For example, let's say we have a character named Sally who is a high school student, motivated to do well in school so that she can get into a good college. She is aware or conscious of this motivation. However, what she may not be aware of is that she is also motivated to do well in school because as the youngest child in her large family, she feels the need to be perfect in order to stand out from her siblings. This unconscious motivation can have a huge impact in the way she behaves, even if she isn't aware of it. Blending conscious and unconscious motivations is a good way to make your characters more complex and also make them more realistic. Character motivation can also help your reader empathize with the character, especially when it comes to any difficult choices your character may have to make. Motivations like a desire to care for loved ones or a drive to succeed are things that your reader might connect and relate to, even if the character's exact situation is one that the reader will never experience. So, how do you come up with motivations for your characters, and how can you tie them into the story you're telling? One easy way to do this is to ask yourself what the character wants most, and then figure out what is standing in the way of them getting that thing. And this can tie very easily into the central conflict of your story. You can also ask yourself, what are the character's obsessions or the things they fixate on the most? The answer to this question might help you also determine their motivations. You can think of motivation in terms of levels of need. In psychology, there's a concept called Maslow's Hierarchy, in which each level of the pyramid must be achieved before the next one can. In general, if someone's immediate life-threatening needs are not met, they're probably not going to be wasting time worrying about the more abstract ideas higher up on the pyramid. At any moment in your story, you can think of which needs need to be met before the character can progress, then work on ways to either give them those needs or prevent them from being reached. Keeping character motivation in mind as you write is a good way to make sure your characterization is consistent as the story progresses. Real people have reasons for why they behave certain ways, or why they believe certain things, so your characters should too. Even if a character that does something that seems to go against previous expectations you've set up, as long as it makes sense within the context of the character's established motivations, you can have your character do unexpected things that can propel your plot in surprising directions. To help you practice this, here is today's writing exercise. Think of one of your characters. What would it take to motivate them to do something out of character? For example, what would it take to make a good person commit a terrible crime, or a selfish person to do something nice for someone else? Thinking of this lets you figure out the character's limits, and what will force the character to change, what will break them, and in general terms, figure out what their priorities are in terms of motivation. Once you figure this out, you can add more dramatic moments to your story, as well as have your character grow by placing them in challenging situations to make them confront their motivation head-on. With that said, now think of a scenario where your character does something seemingly out of character, but frame it in a way that makes sense when you consider their motivation. When your character does something unexpected, can you explain why it actually makes sense that they did it? And that is the end of this week's video. Next week, we are going to talk about antagonists, and that is going to connect to some of the things we talked about motivation with in this video.